And happy birthday again. I can always remember Tara's birthday because it's my grandson's birthday. Today's Jeremy's birthday. And I'm extremely excited because I think it was just 5 years ago when he was on an operating table and they opened up his chest to work on his heart. But he's 10 years old today, and I give God the glory for all that he's done and all that he continues to. God is a good God. I tell you what, I'm preaching right now. I don't know what you're waiting on. Amen, amen. God is good. If you have your Bibles, open up with me to Ezekiel, the 25th chapter. I messed around and did something to the PowerPoint, so y'all just have to go with me this morning. We just go with the flow this morning. Pastor, I think it's just a little loud. Thank you. Thank you. I think that's better. Thank you so much. So we've been talking about, last Sunday we talked about in Ezekiel 24, how Ezekiel is talking to those who are in captivity, but also still talking to those who are left in Jerusalem, how things were getting ready to transpire. And as he is preaching, his wife dies, and that's all a part of his ministry, because that was an action sermon for him to show the people how God wanted them to react. You know, sometimes, it's not so much about what happens to you, but it's how you react to what happens to you, how you deal with what happens to you. Sometimes we can lay all out in the floor and we can squall, but when you get up, you still the same thing. And you can kick and you can scream and you can kick against what's going on. And that's not going to do a thing about it. Sometimes it's just the way you react to what's happening to you is going to determine how well you're going to come out of a thing and how well you're going to deal with the thing while it's happening. And so God told him, this is just an action sermon for them. I want you to tell them that when everything starts to go down, I want them to behave the same way that you are. Because he told Ezekiel, I don't even want you to show any emotion. I know this is your wife, and I know this has been your companion for years, and I know how close you are to her, but I don't want you to mourn for her. And that's what I want them to do. I don't want them to mourn, because it's coming. The judgment for them is coming. It's just the way that I said it was going to do, and I don't want you, he says, this is just to tell them that this is a sign. Look at chapter 24, verse 24. Chapter 24, verse 24. Ezekiel 24, verse 24 says, thus Ezekiel is unto you a sign. According to all that he have done shall ye do. And when this cometh, ye shall know that I am the Lord God. Also, the Son of Man, shall it not be in the day when I take from them their strength, the joy of their glory, which his wife was to him, the desire of their eyes, and that whereupon they set their minds, their sons and their daughters, that he that escapeth in that day shall come unto thee, to cause thee to hear it with thine ears. In that day shall thy mouth be open to him which is escaped, and thou shalt speak, and be no more dumb, and thou shalt be a sign unto them, and they shall know that I am the Lord. You would think that after all the things that God had done for them, Brother Carl Ray, that they would have known by now that he is God. But God said, it's just like I got to prove to you. I got to prove to you who I am. I got to show you with these signs and with these wonders who I am. But it's going to come a day you're going to know it. You're going to know it. And so as we go on in the book of Ezekiel in chapters 25 through 28, and I'm not going to really stay there. I'm just going to go through there. The destruction of Israel, we talk about the judgment against the nations, those nations that neighbored Judah. And so when you talk about the judgment against those nations, the destruction of Jerusalem was welcomed by the Gentile nations that were located in the vicinity of the kingdom of Judah. And I wish I had my graphic, because I have a map here that talks about those nations that's surrounding Judah. So let me just say, so you have Phoenicia, you have Philistia, you have Egypt, you have Edom, Moab, and Ammon. And I had a question on the map that you can't see, but out of the ones that I've named, can you remember the ones who were blood relatives to the Jews? So I said Phoenicia, Philistia, Egypt, Edom, Moab, and Ammon. Can you remember the ones who are blood relatives to the Jews? Moab, Edom. Okay, and can tell us how they're related.
Edom, it was Jacob's brother Esau.
Okay.
And Ammon and Moab were Lot's children by his daughter.
That's correct. Okay, so y'all remember though? Y'all remember that? And so they actually was blood relatives, but they ended up being enemies. So can y'all relate to that? You got some blood relatives that's your frenemies. You know, we say that a lot. You know, we want to focus on that. It's not to, you know, be negative. It's not to be negative, but it's to help us to walk in reality. To help us to walk in reality about the people that we're in the house with every day. And when I say in the house, I don't necessarily mean in the house. I mean people that just related to you. And so we have to walk in reality about that, because we have to understand that everybody is not on the same page with you. And everybody doesn't think the way you think. And everybody not going to, so then our expectations, I believe, Brother Carlray, you talked about this one Sunday, it's the expectations, or you or Brother Alex. When we have certain expectations for people, they won't be dashed, they won't be broken when we put them somewhere they shouldn't belong. But we need to walk in reality about that. And so God is a just God, and so he would not be just if he were just going to judge Judah and not judge the other nations. And so then there's a point then where he comes to talk to Ezekiel to tell him what's going to happen to them. So during the days, when those nations were up and at their best, and when they were operating at optimum, the Jews had been a separated people. And we know that God called them out to be a separate people. God called them out and put them in a place and said, look, I don't want you to mingle with them. I don't want you to be among them. He said, come out from among them and be separate, said the Lord. Be sanctified, said the Lord. And this irritated them. You know, people get upset with you when you're different. People criticize you when they don't understand what's going on with you, when you're different. And so they were separate. They were, as I said this earlier, they were the only nation who served the true and living God. And so if they were saying they serve the true and living God, then what that meant to the other nations were, if y'all saying y'all serve the true and living God, then we must be serving, our gods are dead. Or so we're worshiping just dead idols. And so that didn't sit well with them. So when you go back into their history, both Saul and David had met many of these nations on the battlefield. They fought many of them. And the Gentiles remembered, and they resented how they were humiliated in defeat. Because they were defeated by those kings. But as the kingdom of Judah drifted from the Lord, and this is what happens when you get away from the Lord, when you start doing your own thing, the Jewish people adopted the gods and the practices of the Gentiles. And so now they had been boasting about serving a true and living God, but then they started drifting further away from God. And as they started drifting away from God, then they took on the practices of those nations around them. And then to their neighbors, that looked like hypocrisy. So now you've been saying all along that you've been serving the true and living God, then Why do you need other gods? If you go on serving somebody else, why are you serving other gods? That's just hypocrisy. That's what we call it. Then you also look at, why would the kings of Judah look to human allies for protection if Jehovah, which is what they were saying, our God will take care of us. If Jehovah is able to take care of you, then why y'all looking to these other nations? Why are you going to Egypt, and why are you going to all of the nations around you to look for them to help you if you're saying God will help you? So nothing pleased them more. And you know, this is something when you're going through. The people that's been wanting to see you fall, when you're going through, see, they've been waiting on this day. The nations around them have been waiting on this day. Nothing pleased them more than to be able to laugh at the Jews. Oh, y'all been talking about God this and God that, and your God this and your God. Now look at you. And so now they were at a point where they were humiliated, and now it would seem that the gods of the Babylonians were stronger than the God the Jews worship. So that's what happens. But you know, laughers catch it. That's my philosophy. I'm gonna try to look. I try to hold it. That's what look. I'm this way, y'all. I can't hardly stand nothing. Can I just be transparent with y'all this morning? It's December 15th, 2019. I might well go and tell the truth. I can't hardly stand nothing. So then, when I see you going through, I'm trying not to put my mouth on you. I'm trying not to say nothing. I'm trying not to even hardly look at you because I don't want it to come back on me. Because I can't take it. I can't take it. Y'all had to drag me on in the door. And so you have to watch it. I always say you have to watch when you put your mouth on somebody. You have to watch your attitude, and you have to watch your criticisms. You have to watch that because, y'all, we don't know. We don't know what somebody is going through, how they're going through it, why they're going through it. We don't know. And so just hold on. They say if you're not going through now, hold on. Your time is coming. And so when your time is coming, you don't want nobody looking at you cross-eyed. And so laughers catch it. So let's just be cautious of that. And so that was the thing with the Gentile nations. They laughing at the Jews, but their time was coming. Their time was coming. God was saying, really, look, let me just let you know this, that I am just, and so I'm punishing them, but I am going to discipline you as well. I'm going to punish you as well, because I'm not just the God of the Jews. I'm the God of, I'm God. And so what they didn't realize, it wasn't just a punishment of the Jews. It was also a warning to them. And if it was a warning that he was God and God enough to discipline them. But God was also judging the Gentiles, not just for their criticism of the Jews, not just for how they reacted to the Jews, but he was also judging them for the way they treated his people. Because this was part of the covenant promise that God had made to Abraham. And I think we visited this in a Bible study Wednesday night. But let's just go back to that original covenant with Abraham in Genesis, the 12th chapter. So let's go back to Genesis 12, and let's look at verses 1 through 3. And I need some water, please. Okay, are you there? Now the Lord had said unto Abram, get thee out of thy country, and from thy kindred, and from thy father's house, unto a land that I will show thee. and I will make of thee a great nation, and I will bless thee and make thy name great, and thou shalt be a blessing. And I will bless them that bless thee, and curse him that curseth thee. And in thee shall all families of the earth be blessed. So everything, it comes back to this covenant. So there's no way that they could have mistreated them and not be disciplined for it. And so, thank you so much. So when you look at it, God was just honoring his word and honoring his promise to Abraham. And so, all of those nations, even those nations who were blood relatives, that's what they had to look forward to, because they crossed covenant lines when they mistreated God's people. And so when you look at chapters 25 through 28, that's basically all it's talking about. It's talking about the judgment that he's going to make on all of those nations that surrounded the nations of Israel. So you get to chapters 29 through 32, and if you just flip on over there, chapters 29 through 32, it talks about Egypt. Now, he points out and takes up a lot of time with Egypt. Now, why do you think that is, that he takes up so much time pointing out Egypt?
Because that's where they went for help all the time.
Okay.
I'm just saying,
I would think so. So Egypt, when you talk about all the nations, this was the seventh nation that Ezekiel talked about in the judgment, where he was making on those surrounding nations. And it received more attention than any of the ones. And I would think it's because Egypt, they went to them for help. But here's the irony in that. The irony in that is that Egypt had made the Jews suffer greatly as slaves.
you're talking about going back to before Moses?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And even after they got to be kingdoms, the two kingdoms, even after they got to be kingdoms, they got to be a thorn in their flesh. And then, even though they were a thorn in their flesh, they would always run to them, as you said. They would always run to them as an ally, but they were not a dependable ally. It's something to have allies, but then you need people you can trust. If you're going to run to them, it need to be somebody that can help you, actually help you, somebody that you can depend on. Egypt wasn't any more help, couldn't be any more help to them than they could help themselves. And so, even so, whenever a crisis loomed, as Pastor Bland has alluded to, they were prone to look to Egypt for help. And I would suppose it's because of Egypt's military prowess. It was so many more of them than it was of the Jews. And so I think, you know how something just looks better? And so if it looks better, we think it is better. And so the longer the Jews were away from Egypt, the more they idealized their experiences there and forgot about the slavery and toil. So I want to, and I'm going to ask Brother Wade to just kind of, if you can kind of pause that for a minute so we can set. I appreciate you all for that. So, Pastor, did you have something?
I did, but I think you just dropped something off on me.
What did he say?
He said everybody get mad at the alarm clock because they want to stay asleep. Whatever I had, I just lost it.
That's so true, BJ. I got mad this morning.
They get enough nerve to hit it and snooze. Hit it.
You don't want to stay in reality. The reality is you can't sleep forever.
I know what it was. I have to see the truth in order not to go back. I have to see the truth. It wasn't until I conceded to my innermost self that I was an addict, that using cocaine wasn't going to never be to my good, it wasn't going to never work. Because I kept lying to myself, Tyra, saying this time it's going to be different. What I'm going to do is I'm going to buy some, I'm going to sell some, I'm going to use some. You know, yeah, I can't sell no dope. I sell it and buy it back from you. But I can't ever, somebody else has got to bring me the message and I got to accept the message. I got to humble myself. And even today, pastor and all this, and I feel like that I know God is using me because there's stuff that come out of me that I got no idea where it came from, had to come from God. But out of all that, he still is not going to put my answer within me. I've got to humble myself and hear somebody else in order for me to get my answer. And so Ezekiel is telling them, but they won't hear.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's just so true. And then I'm thinking about the two of you all here. When God brings it, well, when God places someone in your path, and it's your opportunity to share with them, to help bring them into reality. You can only do that if you deal in the truth. If you are, that's the only way it's going to help them. So you have to have the courage, and that takes courage. It takes courage because you know, just like the people didn't want to hear Ezekiel.
Deborah, all these alcoholics and drug addicts in Phillips County and surrounding areas, this meeting that Robert and I started back in 1992? I don't know how many years that is, but it's a long time ago. 28 years. We only got about 5 people that meet with us. And it really don't have nothing to do with us. We just stay there and wait on them. And when they come, God has prepared them, Brother Davis. And you can just about tell. Because if they come in there whining about this and whining about that, and they don't have, you know, what they want you to be is their banker. They want you to listen at them and all that. So they're not listening. They're not listening. They come in telling you. You know, whatever it was, you knew that before you came in. You need to shut up and sit down and listen, and we can share with you what we did in order to, so it's just very few people. I count myself as fortunate. I count myself as fortunate that some kind of way God let me be disabled enough to listen to somebody, because that ain't my history. From a little boy, my mom used to tell me, I used to get so mad. She said, Vanda, you smart, but it's your attitude. Woo, when she said that, that burned me up. Instead of me looking at me, I'm looking at everybody else. I said, well, you, and I'm looking at her. You.
It's so true. It's so true. I've had, you know, this is the ministry that I have is that, you know, I've been married quite a while, and so I have people to come to me to talk about this and to talk about that. Okay.
But don't you find that a lot of times you can give other people good advice, but you won't take it?
Oh my God, yes, but absolutely. And so no, it's for you to help them, or yeah.
And that's what I said before. It's all a part of God humbling you. Who you supposed to be?
Yeah.
You can't help yourself.
Yeah.
You got to humble yourself for somebody to come and what's really hard to stomach is when you got to take the same advice you gave somebody else.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely you do. Absolutely you do. So,
Right here don't want to go down.
yeah, it's all about humility. That would be what Brother Alex would say. It's about humility.
Y'all say amen for
The saints coming in, amen. Amen. Looking good. Making a, amen. Praise the Lord. Good to see y'all. So, yeah, you just, you have to have the courage to speak the truth. Person, whether they receive it or not, you know, God, you let God deal with them. But you have the courage to speak. You have the courage to speak the truth. Because, y'all, the truth is the only thing that's going to help the people. It's the only thing that's going to help you. It's the only thing that's going to help me. Or why would, you know, it's something as simple as, you know, somebody got on something that ain't, you know, it ain't hidden. But you saying, you know, oh, you look so good. You ain't helping nobody. You ain't helping nobody. We got to walk in the truth.
Deborah, God's way is such a low way. It's a low way. It's never haughty. God's way is never getting nobody straight. God's way is never knocking nobody down and standing over. Part of the reason that I'm so stressed and everything is how hard I had to work last week, trying cases and stuff, and the traps that was laid for me. The guy that's been hired to help me, I looked there, I'm by myself at the table. So I had to ask somebody else. Now, I'm the only black person. I'm the only black. And I had to ask somebody else. I said, well, where he at? Oh, he on vacation. I said, well, how you know? Everybody know, but I don't know. He said, because he ain't going to tell you. He don't feel like he need to tell you. Then I got the police who don't like the decision that I make, because I'm not going to send some little black kid, 17 years old, to prison for 40 years for breaking in a house, when I just seen a little white boy who broke in 36 houses, and they gave him 90 days in the county jail. You see what I'm saying? So they mad about it, and then one of them done had me just to drop the charge of period on her half brother. But you want to send him to prison for 40 years, so you don't like, so y'all don't even show up the day I'm doing the trial, and you can't prove nothing without no witnesses. But God blessed and gave me the know-how to be able to do it, and I convicted them anyway without it. I said all that to say this right here. You got to not focus on what nobody doing to you. You got to focus on God. Don't get mad at nobody. Don't have this and all that and everything. Look within yourself and say, God, you clean me. You clean me. You keep me right. You keep me where I'm not walking around in resentment, because I'm going to tell y'all something. It's a whole lot of folk got professional jobs, and they are not professional. They are not professional. It means something to me to have a professional job, to be able to wear a white shirt, to be able to come in and be clean all day. To me, it's a responsibility. You can't act like somebody that only, digging a ditch or whatever. You ought to have a higher level of behavior. But without God, you're going to act like anything.
Yeah. So true. That is so true. Oh my God, that is so true. So we'll just start on chapter 29 and we'll end here because our time is up. But on chapter 29, where he is delivering the prophecies to Egypt, and in judgment of their treatment of Israel. I'm in Ezekiel 29, chapter 29, verse 1. In the 10th year, in the 10th month, in the 12th day of the month, the word of the Lord came unto me, saying, Son of man, set thy face against Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and prophesy against him and against all Egypt. Speak and say, Thus saith the Lord God, Behold, I am against thee, Pharaoh, king of Egypt, the great dragon that lieth in the midst of his rivers, which has said, My river is mine own, and I have made it for myself. But I will put hooks in thy jaws, and I will cause the fish of thy rivers to stick unto thy scales, and I will bring thee up out of the midst of thy rivers, and all the fish of thy rivers shall stick unto thy scales. And I will lead thee thrown into the wilderness, thee and all the fish of thy rivers. Thou shalt fall upon the open fields. Thou shalt not be brought together nor gathered. I have given thee for meat to the beasts of the field and to the fowls of the heaven And all the inhabitants of Egypt shall know that I am the Lord, because they have been a staff of reed to the house of Israel. This was always, Israel always wanted to lean on Egypt. They wanted to lean on them. But what God is saying, because Egypt was prideful. So that you see there, Pharaoh saying, it's my river. They all wanted to always lean on them, but God said, you lean on a reed that will break.
So Lady Deborah, I'm just playing to myself. I want to lean on what God has brought me out of.
What God has brought you out of, and you want to lean on what can't help you.
Glory to God. Thank you.
Israel couldn't help them. They only thought Israel could help them because they were mightier in the numbers that they had, because Israel, Judah they were tiny, they were little.
And you know, it's stupid for me to sit up and get mad at other people and to look at them like it's my reason my life is because of them, because every switch that I done had in my life, I went at.
Come on now. Come on now. Yes, you did.
And wasn't dissatisfied until it started whooping.
Exactly.
Then I'm crying on God. God, come help me and everything. Then once He'll help me and put me in a better situation, I get to looking back at this switch, but it wasn't that bad.
See, and there you go. And that's the scenario. That's the scenario that we had this morning. We start looking back at it. We idealize it because we want to keep doing.
Look, Rob and I, we do the same. I don't let nobody tell me that it wasn't that bad.
Come on, Pastor.
No, it wasn't that bad. No, you need to go around me. It was that bad.
It was just that bad. It was just that bad.
That's the reason we have a saying, we keep the grass green. Amen. You know, I don't regret the past, and I want you to shut the door on it. Every now and then, God bless me to go back and look in that hole.
Yes, yes,
That nasty hole
yes,
I came up out of.
yes.
I don't look back to go back.
Yeah, no,
But I
no.
look back because, you know, things get hard over here. Things get hard over here. And the only reason it's hard is, Susanna Bailey, because I don't want it. It's my will. I don't like it. But the word tells me that God's going to work it together for my good.
Yeah,
If I just hold on.
yeah, yeah.
I'm preaching right.
Yeah, give the Lord a hand praise. We'll pick up here next Sunday, chapter 29 of Ezekiel.